Good late evening, everybody. I think it's like, what, 2 if you're on Eastern, 1-ish Central, and then, is it past, it's not even past midnight then, be 11 Pacific. So appreciate you guys coming in to check out the latest and greatest here. I did figure something out. So a lot of folks, they have these extended intros like that, and it's not because they necessarily want to have one. It gives you time to set up all of your technical stuff. So stream wasn't working over to TikTok. The YouTube one was, of course, working. That one always works. It's great. YouTube's remarkable. Anyway, the TikTok one wasn't working too hot, so I had to switch it over and at least put it on the X platform. One of these days, I'll get them all down and we'll broadcast to like 4 or 5 places at once. But for now, I appreciate everybody joining in. Well, let's dive right into it. What do we got here? It's our buddy here, Putin, holding his red button. Fairly sizable one they have. There's been quite a bit of tension that's, I think, largely been ignored over the weekend. Everybody's been very fixated on, the appointees that came in from Trump. A lot of people have been looking to formulate some kind of a narrative around them. And you'll notice a couple of key themes that are developing. One of inexperience, one of not having the capability to actually, do that particular job, whatever it might be. Matt Gaetz, for instance, like when did he ever run a large organization of any kind for him to take over DOJ, let alone how much trial experience does he have to understand what it takes to, take some of these prosecutions forward. So there's a lot of those criticisms that are getting formulated for all of Trump's picks, not just one. It's not just Gaetz, but across the board. And slowly but surely, the sentiment is moving away from one of, being completely down in the dumps and the world is over to we got to return to the fight. And if you remember, in her speech, her concession speech, the word fight, that phrasing was brought up quite a few times by Kamala, to the point where people made note of it, like, oh, she said it like 23 times or whatever it was. It may have been like 18 or something, I don't remember. But still a little unusual to bring up, one word, especially when it's fight, so many times in a concession speech, right? So why is that? It sends a subliminal message. These things are done intentionally by speechwriters. And I think they want this hunger, right? They want this hunger to develop in the liberal base. But it's up to them to feed it and nurture it, to allow it to exist for, well over 2 years or whatever. I mean, yeah, just over 2 years, maybe just under 2 years till they get to the midterm election cycle, for them to have another chance at retaking some power, because they're out. Effectively, they're just going to be talking heads. They're out of the government in most significant ways. So let me scoot this over so I can see the chat here. Don't forget to go out. Very nice. Hey, Mello, what's going on? I appreciate you coming back in again. It's like my best supporter there. I appreciate you. Funny. So, who is this? Buckaroo. Buckaroo, you should take a look at one of the videos I have in my channel. There's a gentleman wearing a shirt just like that at a Kamala Harris rally that I attended. And yes, I attended the rally. I didn't disrupt anything. I just made observations, made for some good content. There were altercations happening around me, protests. It was all kinds of craziness. It would have been a little unsettling for some, but I don't know. I just let the camera roll. It was kind of a good time for me. So let's dive into this, because the other things I was talking about, all of the politics, how do they frame Trump's appointees? How do they really make them seem like they're not the right person? And it's in 2 phases. They put something out to cause a very negative public sentiment for the individual, And once they're successful in doing that, then they can quickly put pressure on the Republican senators that would be endorsing them. And they do that through public sentiment, because the senators themselves, okay, I don't want to be associated with, and then fill in the blank, because I'm going to be up for reelection in a couple of years. So everything comes back to being reelected, comes back to, how it's going to blow back on me. And they're trying to create that environment. I don't think they have it quite down yet, how they're going to make that happen, but that's been the majority of what's been talked about. But what's being missed, I think, is a big thing on Russia. Biden just approved the use of long-range missiles by the Ukraine, and for them to be used into Russia itself. So this is somewhat unprecedented. What does that say? Man, my eyes are bad. Manufacturing public opinion, more or less. I'm autistic, so I'm sure I'd fit in at that rate. No, man, you fit in anywhere, bro. So we have a lot of neurodiverse folks at my office, and I mean, shoot, you could fit in anywhere. Don't sweat that. You don't have to always go with the Kamala bunch. Let me click through to my notes here. So if you want to see the notes that I've got, it's published on my website, politicalcow.com. I'm just publishing my notes there from now on. Probably said that a few times over the last 7 or so political ASMR events. Just a little bit easier, so I don't have to look things up in multiple places. And if people ask, I could just point them to one spot. It's not elegant. It's just, the posts that I found of interest, I add them in there, and I've started to kind of make my own posts so that I can kind of capture information, and it'll be put on the X platform, and then I can use it here to structure it on my page as well. All right. So Putin, right? Not too happy. And I got like a little bit of some notes on the background of it if you guys are interested. I'm going to skip over. I'm not going to read this to you line by line here. But he's not too happy with the actions that are being taken. It seems like some of this is a bit hurried too. Right at the end of his tenure, he's having a lot of folks kind of do things to just push some stuff through right at the last second here. So here, let's listen to Blinken and what he's talking about in terms of the support that's going to be given to Ukraine here.
As we're working to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend itself, the United States continues to step up. We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
All right. So a few problems I have with that. I like the comment there. Why does Putin have a Frisbee? So I asked AI to make a lot of my images for me. I'm assuming you're talking about this. And I said, hey, make a picture. I didn't have a lot of time to go through iterations. I said, make a picture of Putin holding a big red button, right? And that's what it gave me. So no base to it, but it's supposed to be a big red button. So a couple of things going on here, right? They're cornering the Trump's administration by rushing all of these resources and dollars over to. That's kind of cornering the Trump administration, right? Because if they make any significant turn, it'll be catastrophic to what's going on out there. Which I hate to say it, but they play politics like this all the time, and I don't like it. The other thought process too, when he says we're going to spend every dollar at our disposal until January the 20th of next year, that statement is exactly what's wrong with government, right? They're allocated a budget, and their goal is to spend it all before the next fiscal year comes up. You spend it, otherwise you lose it, and they don't want to lose a penny of it. But why? Why not be efficient and say like, hey, I got everything done that I'm supposed to as my group, as my team, as my department. as our federal agency, we did everything that we were asked for. Why do we need to continue to spend everything that was appropriated to us? We should be able to give that back to the Treasury. Who's in college studying gender theory, my friend? All right. So anyway, there are a couple of things there that I'm not too happy about. I think I'm more, in this case with this comment, more irritated by the idea of we'll spend every dollar that's at our disposal. All right. Oop, what happened here? My stream health is poor. Hopefully you guys can still see this. So that was his first statement. Let's go over here, another statement that he made here recently.
Sometime, the United States has warned of an additional threat, the provision by Iran of ballistic missiles to Russia for use in Ukraine. We've warned Tehran publicly, we've warned Tehran privately, that taking this step would constitute a dramatic escalation. Dozens of Russian military personnel have been trained in Iran to use the Fata 360 close-range ballistic missile system, which has a maximum range of 75 miles. Russia has now received shipments of these ballistic missiles and will likely use them within weeks in Ukraine against Ukrainians. In recent days, we've been sharing intelligence behind these findings with our allies and partners and working together to ensure that there will be significant economic consequences for Tehran's actions. The United States will be announcing further sanctions on Iran later today, including additional measures on Iran Air. We expect allies and partners will be announcing their own new measures on Iran as well.
So it's a continuation of escalations, highlighting the connection point with Iran in this case. Things are very interconnected there. China, Iran, Russia, a lot of the things that are happening in the Middle East, the issue along the Persian Gulf that was happening out there. A lot of these things are connected. And again, you get the sense of calling out the problem and we need to throw some money at it. We need to throw some resource at it, right? Oh, hey, and if you guys can, please give the live a like. It'll help with the search algorithm for me in the future as to kind of determine who's got an engaged audience. So I appreciate if you guys give me some likes on that. All right, so let's go to the next one, right? So here, Russia grinds deeper into Ukraine after 1,000 days of a grueling war. So I keep hearing mixed, I put that up there. That's just the screenshot that I took. But I put that up there because I keep hearing mixed feedback. I hear, one day, Russia's advancing and making inroads. The next day, it's actually Ukraine that's making the inroads and pushing back. I don't know what's going on exactly. It's a little strange to me. And so I don't know. Is this the latest case? And that's why we have to send so much resource over to them that Blinken and Biden are, really jumping all over. I don't know. But the other aspect now that makes me think, perhaps Russia is drilling in to Ukraine more, and it's looking a bit more daunting, is that this right here, that Biden has authorized the Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles. Now that is a pretty significant difference. Oops. Because now they can actually, hit Moscow or go farther into Russia than they'd anticipated before. And I don't know if they have similar missile defense systems as we do, or those programs like the Israeli government has, which I think is an American-based technology. But that could have some devastating consequences if they start firing in like that. To the point where Putin himself has started pushing back and responding to this. Oh yeah, and here's the leader of Iran that's excited to get into the mix here. Do I have a cap? Let me see if there's a caption on it. No, just a photo of him. So here you go. Putin then has a public response to, the decisions that made by the Biden administration of equipping Ukraine with long-range missiles.
Происходит попытка подмены понятий, потому что речь не идет о разрешении или запрете киевскому режиму наносить удары по российской территории. Он и так наносит с помощью беспилотных летательных аппаратов и другими средствами, но когда речь идет об использовании высокоточного оружия большой дальности западного производства, это совершенно другая история. Дело в том, что я уже об этом говорил, и любые эксперты это подтвердят, и у нас, и на Западе, наносить удары современными высокоточными системами большой дальности западного производства украинская армия не в состоянии. Она не может этого делать. Это возможно только с использованием разведданных со спутников, которыми Украина не располагает. Это данные только со спутников или Евросоюза, либо на Соединенных Штатах, в общем, с натовских спутников. Это первое. Второе, и очень важное, может быть, ключевое, заключается в том, что полетные задания в эти ракетные системы могут, по сути, вносить только военнослужащие стран НАТО. Украинские военнослужащие делать это не могут. И поэтому речь идет не о том, чтобы разрешать украинскому режиму наносить удары по России этим оружием или не разрешать. Речь идет о том, чтобы принять решение о том, что страны НАТО напрямую участвуют в военном конфликте или нет. Если это решение будет принято, это будет означать не что иное, как прямое участие стран НАТО, Соединенных Штатов, европейских стран в войне на Украине. Это их прямое участие. И это уже, конечно, существенным образом меняет саму суть, саму природу конфликта. Это будет означать, что страны НАТО, США, европейские страны воюют с Россией. А если это так, то, имея в виду изменение самой сути этого конфликта, мы будем принимать соответствующие решения, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам будут создаваться.
All right, so you had to read the captions there. I tried to enlarge it a little bit. Let me put the scaling back to where it was. My key takeaway from his statements there is that he's saying it's clear that if the Ukrainian government and military receives these more advanced weapons, they're not really in a position to be able to fully make use of them and use them properly because there's dependent pieces to it, right? You want to send out long-range missiles? Well, what are you sending it out to hit? You need some intelligence on that. So, as he was pointing out, Ukraine has no satellites. The U.S. does, or the European Union does. Oops, sorry, guys. So clearly, there's continuing support. It's not just providing, military equipment and arms. There's more to it, to the point where he's characterizing this as kind of like a participation on the part of the European Union and the United States. We are indirectly fighting right alongside them by providing with this intelligence. And so he was making that example out of the system, the new rocket systems that are going to be sent out there. He's making that example to kind of call the United States out, call out the European Union that they're actually not behaving in good faith here. Good faith in terms of if they want to come to the table and have some sort of international agreement. So the bottom line, though, is this is escalating tensions, right? He's getting frustrated and upset about this. He's not happy about what's happening here. I'm sure other countries in the region are feeling more apprehensive because they're basically in the line of fire with all this stuff happening here. Thomas says that Russia and Ukraine should unite under you, Zarthir. Okay. I read Thomas, not Theodore. You want them to unite. Okay. Well, hey, that's a thought. Maybe we get that on the ballot for them, huh? So anyway, he's calling out, hey, you guys you're actually at war with us directly right now. There's a lot of nations at war, not just Ukraine. Everybody's piling in here, and not just providing cash, but directly executing intelligence operations ahead of time for them. And so it goes on from there, right? Here's another one that he's talking about. Let me see, what's my note on this? Okay, yeah, this was a couple months back, and this is the point of the big red button that was on the first screen.
In the updated version of the document.
So there's a translator in this one, thankfully, so just listen in closely.
Aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the support of a nuclear state, is proposed to be considered as their joint attack on Russia. Russia will also consider the possibility of using nuclear weapons when receiving reliable information about a massive launch of means of aerospace attack and their crossing of our state border. This includes strategic and tactical aircraft, as well as cruise missiles and drones, hypersonic and other delivery vehicles. Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in case of aggression, including if the enemy, using conventional weapons, poses a critical threat.
It is important to note at this point that these are at this time proposals to amend Russia's nuclear weapons use doctrine. We heard from Vladimir Putin multiple scenarios in which the rules and regulations governing how Russia can use its nuclear weapons will change. The first scenario is if a non-nuclear power attacks Russia with conventional arms but poses a grave or critical threat to Russia's sovereignty, the Russian leadership will be able to use nuclear weapons to neutralize that threat. The second scenario and how things will change is if that non-nuclear power that is attacking Russia is aided, supplied, abetted by a nuclear power, then that nuclear power will be considered a party to this conflict. So a joint attack on Russia, which will mean Russia will be able to use nuclear weapons both on the non-nuclear power and the nuclear power that it'll consider attacking it. Also, Russia will be able to use, preemptively perhaps use.
So if you're following along at home, who has aided and abetted? It's the European Union, it's the United States, it's NATO. All of those countries are supporting and with them, well, with us, performing intelligence operations via satellites and providing them with long-range missiles now. It fits into that criteria that he put out there, right? It fits into that criteria that was put forth a couple months ago in September. And so that's why he's highlighting that, so that people make that point of reference, like, hey, I told you that this is going to get escalated, and it has at this point. Let's see. One fat boy 114 says, Putin needs to shut up and get out of Ukraine. If it were only that simple. Am I watching RT? What's happening? Is there something happening right now? Hang on, guys. Let's pause real quick. What's going on RT? Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not surprised by that headline. Not a surprising headline at all. Right, let's close that out. Go back over here. Here, I'll continue with the reporters kind of highlighting, but I didn't want to make sure that everybody had that connection in place, that this is being put out there now again, because he wants people to make that connection that he said a couple months ago, like, look, I'm going to have to draw a red line here. If other countries start getting involved, things are going to get escalated. And unlike Obama's red line, I think Putin's red line, he will actually enforce in some way. He may not go to the red button option right off the bat, but he will, through sophisticated cyber attacks, something, start impacting
nuclear
other countries.
Weapons, if there is verified information, proof that there is an ongoing attack on Russia using aerospace assets, or, for example, a mass launch of drones. Again, I must mention that these at this time are proposals on how Russia's first use of nuclear weapons, its nuclear doctrine, will change. Nevertheless, this is a stark warning to the West, the latest in a slew of such. Previously, Vladimir Putin had come out and said that if advanced Western missiles with great ranges are supplied to Ukraine and used against Russia.
Asking if I watch MSNBC, I watch all channels. I don't know if I have any content from them tonight to go over, but I try to watch all the channels. Sometimes it's just for humor.
For strikes deep into Russian territory, then those countries, the United States perhaps, or Great Britain or France, which supply Ukraine with extended range missiles, that they will be complicit in an attack on Russia. Russia has brushed off their arguments that they merely hand these weapons over. Russia says it has evidence, and there is no way that Ukraine can plan, launch, and use these weapons without without NATO troops being involved, without NATO technical staff being involved, without NATO intelligence and NATO satellites being involved. But this comes at a dangerous time, at a time when many Western leaders are saying, ignore Putin and Russia's warnings, supply Ukraine with these missiles, and undoubtedly, even though they won't change anything, undoubtedly, Ukraine, they believe, will be able to resist Russia further. An argument that both military experts and the Russian government have said is in itself senseless.
So I'm always impressed when those reporters are literally on the ground in the middle of what could be a pretty hot spot out there. Someone in the chat, 33 is it cigarettes? Oh my gosh, my eyes are blurry. I got a new pair of glasses I ordered on Friday, and it might take a week for them to mail it out to me. So hopefully I don't have to do all this squinting crap. It's been like way too long. I've put that off way too long, guys. So hopefully I'll be doing better with that soon. Anyway, Zelensky needs to put his grubby hands back in his pockets and concede the loss. I think that has to be part of what happens. Those areas along the border that are pro-Russian and likely wanted to secede anyway, cut the losses, try to establish some kind of a permanent peace. And as soon as that's done, you could turn to the United States and say, hey, we need you to come invest in here to rehabilitate and rebuild our country. And we'll jump all over that. That's where we make tons and tons of money. There's a lot of money to be made in that type of activity, which is very unfortunate, but we wouldn't pass up that opportunity to help out and gain a stronger foothold in the region on top of it. But, so again, Biden endorses the use of long-range missiles. Today, Putin says, it's not just Ukraine, it's also the United States, that they're kind of colluding, providing intelligence for them up front, doing other logistical operations to help support them in their war efforts. Even though it's not in-your-face type activities, it's still part of what a military does, doing intelligence and doing supply chain related work. And he said that because it references something he said a couple months back, that if any country is aiding the Ukraine, that they're basically party to this crisis as well, and that they could be subject to being attacked by Putin. I don't think it's a good idea, but it's still a little alarming that he's making those associations. And so it's just come out a month later now that these these missile systems, these long-range missile systems, they won't operate themselves, and they need some additional logistical help from the United States to make it all happen. All right. This might be the same video, actually. Yeah, this is the same video of him on the street. We'll just skip past that. And then, of course, the question really remains, what happens when Trump's in office? What's going to happen to Ukraine? Is he going to continue to fund it? Is he going to defund it all outright? What does that picture look like exactly? And you see Zelensky there just trying to do his best to network and plead his case. But let's watch the interaction between these two in this press conference.
Another meeting in the near future between you.
Could very well happen, but I think the president said it the best. This is a war that should have never happened. It should have never happened, and it wouldn't have happened. It's a shame, but this is a war that should have never happened, and we'll get it solved. It's a complicated puzzle, very complicated puzzle, but we'll get it solved, and people get on with their lives. Too many people dead. Too many beautiful cities. I've seen those cities. They're so beautiful, and they, I don't know how you can ever rebuild them the way they were. It's not possible.
You have to come, by the way, to see us.
Well, I will. It's a beautiful country, beautiful weather, beautiful everything. But we have to get this over with. Yeah. But it's a war, and the president agrees. This is a war that should have never happened. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
I apologize. I have my phone open down here too. I'm just kind of trying to work through some stats on it. I may have accidentally put somebody in timeout. It says put timeout, and I can't figure out what I did. So if anybody's in timeout that can hear me, I apologize. I don't know how to undo it. I'm going to keep moving on. Hopefully in a future session, you'll be able to come back in and, no hard feelings, I hope. But I apologize to anyone that may have accidentally... I don't know why they make it so sensitive. You just if you put your finger on the screen too long, it pops something up, and then you try to move it, and you end up swiping. Anyway, it happens when you get old. It's unfortunate. But the interaction here was somewhat unusual to me, right? They weren't buddies. It was almost transactional. It sounded like Zelensky wanted to do a lot more talking. He has, in his mind, more work to do to convince Trump to be on his side of things. Which, they can have a military and be in good shape. It's just, let's come to the table and end this all. Let's bring it to a close. We need to move forward as a society, as a world. We don't need to have these types of things going on out there that are coming to just detract from a lot of other things that you could do from a progress standpoint. We used to contract with a company that was based out of the Ukraine, but we stopped that quite some time ago now. And it's partially because of these types of instabilities. Just off the cuff here, not anything specific, but I mean, I'd almost be concerned about any potential espionage too, right? Just given the proximity, and there's a lot of people that may have been loyal to Russia versus Ukraine. And, depending on what company you are going in there, might be concerning. Or who are you contracting with out there? Because if, you try to hire people in a low-cost geography because from a tech standpoint, you don't pay as much, but is that worth it? Is that risk really worth it there? All right, let me check out some of the comments here. I think there's just a couple that came in. Yeah, I appreciate that. 33 cigarettes. It's funny. RPC, I guess for Real Political Cow. I always just think of it as PC, not RPC, but I appreciate that. And for the folks in the chat, I'm Real Political Cow here on YouTube. All other platforms I've managed to get Political Cow. So X, TikTok, Instagram, so forth. I'm going to look at, getting on a Rumble as well here pretty soon, but all of it will be just through simulcast because everyone's got their favorite network that they like to kind of tune into. So might as well, accommodate that. No big deal. Right. So let me just scoot a little bit further. So as a demonstration of the escalating tensions and the escalation in violence that's happening, here's a quick clip. It's not gory or anything, but just gives you a sense of the level of destruction and activity that's gone on. There was about 210 missiles and drones that hit Ukraine today in this particular location. So you get a sense of the devastation that's out there because of it. Buildings on fire, buildings kind of significantly damaged, demolished potentially. I mean, this is just the continuation. It's going to be endless almost. So how do we get these folks out of that unfortunate circumstance they're in and put them on the path to prosperity? The other point I'll highlight here is the Drudge Report has this as their lead story. Each line under here points to a different story that he's linked out to. And so when Drudge is calling this out as a big deal, it's a really big deal. Normally you see things reserved for scandalous political activities that are going on or what have you, but it's like all that stuff doesn't matter. And he's calling people's attention to this because he knows this is a really big issue. We need to make sure that this is handled correctly over the next few days. And I personally, I wish Trump was in because I don't have a whole lot of confidence in what Biden or Harris are going to do or say or not do to manage this circumstance. There's a lot of negotiating that needs to happen right now, at least start off with some dialogue. And I'm not hearing it. I mean, anybody know where Biden was today? Any clue? Let me bring up my profile here. I'll show y'all where he was. Let's just zip through here. Come on. Come on. Man, I didn't know I took this many. All right. Here's our boy.
Thanks for all being here. Back in the late 80s, Chico Mendes, a Brazilian rubber tapper, who turned environmental activist, said the following, and I quote, "First I thought I was fighting to save rubber trees. Then I thought I was fighting to save the Amazon rainforest. Now I realize I was fighting for humanity." At the time, I was a United States Senator, working with a great Republican senator named Dick Lugar from Indiana to enact a new law. The United States would relieve other countries of debts owed to us if they commit to protecting their own forest. Climate.
So this is the stuff that I talk about priority, right? With all these events going on, and I don't think today kind of happened out of nowhere, right? You don't just shoot from the hip and say, hey, you get to have long-range missiles today. That had to be predetermined. You can cancel your visits and prioritize your time towards things that really matter. And that's the part that gets me every single time, right? I mean, you've got Drudge Report putting this guy out there as the top story. That's a pretty big deal. He doesn't, and he gets like 7-8 billion views on his website per year. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, that many people are coming through and seeing this image up there and at least becoming aware that this is the issue of the moment that someone has to deal with. Let me check out to chat. Yeah, he's in his basement for sure. That's right, Snowball. Whose name is that? Did I miss something? I think I might have missed a name here or something. All right. So, suffice to say, keep an eye on Russia. There's going to be a tremendous amount of discussion and focus on Trump's appointees. That's actually something that should be below the fold. What should be above the fold is this issue that's happening now with Russia. And nobody is giving it the appropriate attention. It's really bizarre. All right. So for the folks that are on live, I appreciate you guys give me a like, share the live. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I want to try to build a community as we kind of move forward, get a little Discord going. Because I think through a Discord, then maybe we can have guests come in and, talk from time to time. The guests that are part of the community. Right now, I don't know who I'm going to pull in. It may just be like local politicians here in the area in Texas, but might be interesting nonetheless. Hey, Nev, I appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Trump told Biden to do that, then Trump could play a good cop when he gets in. That would be a tact. That would be a tactic to take. Excuse me. All right, so that's all the Russia piece. Now, the Sunday morning shows, I think this is the first week where they're not reeling or not in shock of what happened during the election. They're trying to get back into form. They're trying to get back out there and, push a narrative, which I hate to say it, that is what they do. They're not really there to inform you or what have you. But hold on a second. Let me see what this is. Why can't help Palestine? You're talking about the United States specifically? I think a lot of people are trying to provide some aid. How do we go about getting someone to convince Biden to talk to Putin? Yeah, it likely won't happen until Trump comes in office. And I think Putin's intelligent and savvy enough to realize that and just wait. But when actions like Ukraine getting long-range missiles happen, he's not going to not respond. General Underpants, what about the poll? I forgot what poll I put up there. What is this thing? Is he doing a good job? I forgot to put the poll up there. Well, hey, make sure you guys vote on that poll too. Want to see what you guys think. All right. So I want to just play a little bit of the opening monologue that Jen Psaki has out here. And if you don't remember her, she was press secretary for Joe Biden before Karine took over. And she famously would tell people that she had to circle back to provide the information that they'd been asking for. So let me, I'll go ahead and spin this up. We'll pause and kind of walk through and dissect this. And again, there's, to kick it off, because I've listened to a few of these now, they all hit a similar theme. And the theme is kind of making the appointees seem like they are, too radical to take on the role that they have, to make them seem that they're incompetent. They don't, they've either not been leading an organization. Excuse me. They may not have the knowledge or background of intelligence or healthcare or whatever it might be. So it's to, diminish their credentials, make them seem like, they're not high quality individuals. Those are the kind of themes that are now coming through. And, typically it'd be like, well, shoulder shrug. The Republicans have the Senate. They're just going to get nominated. But through social media and through some other means, people start to get called out directly. And for a lot of the folks in the Senate, I mean, not all of them, their next election's coming up in a couple of years. And so they don't want to make any missteps going into that cycle. Let me see here. Derek. Hey, Derek, I think you're here before. How would we go about getting someone to convince Biden? Oh, wait. I already read that. Sorry, guys. I thought I saw it flip on me. But let me go ahead and start this and we'll listen in.
Very soon. These are the people who will be advising the president on every crisis that crosses his desk and representing the United States, for some of them, overseas. And they're the people who have an impact also on your daily lives. See, these choices are, on the one hand, cartoonishly outrageous, but when that dust settles, it's not really just about the scandals in the personal lives of these nominees, and there are many. It's about what their positions and their lack of experience could do to our health system, our national security, and the rights we have in this country. So let's start with RFK Jr., shall we? Did RFK Jr. produce some of these strangest headlines in the history of presidential campaigns? He sure did. Does RFK Jr. have a strange, is one way of describing it, penchant for carrying dead animals in his car? He sure does. But RFK Jr. is also one of the most dangerous purveyors of inaccurate information about vaccines that our country has ever seen. The HHS secretary oversees the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA. So basically, in human terms, our vaccines, our medicine, and our food. His nomination and confirmation would mean that the guy who founded one of the nation's most prominent anti-vaccine groups would be in charge of the agency that makes recommendations on vaccines. The guy who said he would stop research into infectious diseases would be in charge of the agency that studies infectious diseases.
So she's really leaning into RFK now, effectively calling him a vax denier, right? Stuff along those lines. Let me see if I could bring up which excuse me, which that stuff, it's actually pretty false. I mean, let me see if I got that Dr. Drew clip here. Oh, this was just from earlier today. G20 mini agenda. Huh. Let's see, where's Dr. Drew? Dr. Drew. Come on, buddy. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be here. Well, anyway, Dr. Drew went through a number of facts, highlighting that he's not anti-vax. His family, his kids, a lot of people around him have gotten it. It's not like he's anti in any way of that stuff. Let me get back over here. So for RFK, that's the message, right? He's too radical. He's not competent for the job. The radical part is his view on infectious diseases and vaccination. And the incompetence piece is running a health management organization of that scale. I mean, maybe not the primary, but an assistant at least. Excuse me, guys. Sorry, that was a big yawn. All right, let me continue with her spiel here.
So that's what's coming on that front. And then there's Matt Gaetz, Trump's pick to run the Justice Department. Is Matt Gaetz one of the most clownish members of Congress? Of course he is. Was he previously investigated over allegations of sex trafficking a 17-year-old girl? He was. And even though he was never charged, that alone should, of course, disqualify him for any cabinet position, especially, you know, the top law enforcement job in the country.
So I've searched with my AI and so forth. He's never been convicted of anything. I don't know all the circumstances. I've not looked at the detailed evidence, but nothing's gone to trial. He's never been convicted of anything. So that just makes me wonder, how much of this has been kind of drummed up, how much of it's actually, real.
But if he gets confirmed, a guy who has spread conspiracy theories about January 6th and championed the cause of the rioters will oversee all January 6th cases. The guy who has said he is ready to abolish all three-letter agencies from the FBI to the ATF will be in charge of those very agencies. So that's what's coming, part of what's coming, if Matt Gaetz is Attorney General. And then there's Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence. Is Tulsi Gabbard prone to say things like Putin, Zelensky, and Biden should have ended the Ukraine war by using, quote, the aloha spirit? She is, and that's pretty odd. But Tulsi Gabbard, as Director of National Intelligence, would mean an apologist for Vladimir Putin will oversee 18 intelligence organizations, including the CIA and the NSA. It means our allies would look at our intelligence service.
So she termed her as being an apologist, right? In other cases, they get a little bit more extreme, and they say that she is, in fact, a Russian asset. So there's a couple of other clips that I've shown in over the past few nights where that's how the Democrat congressmen and senators have started to refer to her as a Russian asset. Which, it's just bizarre to me how they didn't learn their lesson from 4 years ago. That if you just arbitrarily start yelling somebody's a Russian asset, that's not really going to end up well unless there's actually something foundational behind it. And of course, in this circumstance, it's pure politics. They just want to raise the alarm bells to make a difference in terms of the selections that are made, show that they have some power still, even though they got voted out of the entire Congress and, they lost the presidency. They want to seem like they have some power and are able to make some noise.
Potentially, and see someone at the top who has shown a greater fondness for dictators and our adversaries than our friends. And some of those allies will see someone they might think twice about sharing their own secrets with. We don't know. That's what's coming with Tulsi Gabbard atop our national intelligence services. And finally, there's Pete Hegseth, a veteran and a cable news host who has gone viral for axe-throwing mishaps and saying things like he can't remember washing his hands once over the last decade, which that is gross. But more recently, the headlines have revolved around a sexual assault allegation against him. And while he was never charged, his lawyer says he agreed to pay his accuser for a non-disclosure agreement. And yes, all of that, well, mainly the last piece, should be disqualifying on its own. But also consider the much bigger picture here again. His confirmation would mean someone who champions service members accused of war crimes would oversee our military. Someone who has said the military should not have women in combat roles will be in charge of lots of women in lots of combat roles. Secretary of Defense.
So I'm going to pause there. I don't know in the chat, but how many of y'all think it's a good idea for women to be in combat roles? And I don't mean a competency standpoint. I mean, I think of it as hey, that's not okay. I need to be a bit protective or what have you. Some of these things I don't think are that controversial. I think the charges that were filed against him that are surprise to people, that's the biggest roadblock that he has at this point. Trying to explain that and come back from that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with some of the things that he said, as far as that, not allowing him to kind of move forward. It would be his discretion at that point as the defense secretary to make those rules or to make those changes happen.
Defense leads the largest organization in our government with millions of employees, including active service members, and a $900 billion budget. Their job is not at all to decide whether the military is woke or not, whatever that means. But that's what a Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, will see it as. So look, my point here is this. There's a lot of information coming at us fast and furious about all of these picks. Maybe Trump is testing his power over Republicans in the Senate by putting these people forward, maybe. Or maybe he thinks that Matt Gaetz and RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth are the best people for these jobs. Maybe he thinks that. Whatever the motivation, we can't just focus on the latest shocking headline. And that shouldn't be the only messaging, because it's easy to assume these personal scandals will prevent them from getting these jobs. But with this Republican Party, we just can't count on that. So it's important to understand what could be coming and, of course, how it could impact all of your lives.
So very detailed and extensive monologues, and as I've heard a few of them, they hit on that same theme. The individuals are extreme, they're being appointed in terms of their perspective and the actions they've taken in the past. They're actually not qualified for the role that they're taking on. Either no leadership experience, no experience in government, so to speak. You go down the list of things. But I think that's going to get pushed more. Excuse me. More, excuse me, guys. Excuse me. That's going to get pushed more and more as we kind of go forward here. There's been 27 appointments that I captured. Of course, this was a couple of days ago. Maybe it was Friday. I'm sure more have come in since, but it's not practical to do this with all of them. So I'm sure the Democrat Party will just focus in on what they consider the high-value roles out of the bunch, the ones that are going to be, most influential. So, for example, right, Matt Gaetz, that's a pretty big, shift in terms of the ideology that'll be put in the DOJ. So it's stuff like that that I think they're afraid of. But they're afraid of it, and it spurs them to create these talking points. And it sometimes makes me wonder, does everybody get the same email in the morning? Like, these are the 10 different things that you have to say about all these people in a day, like ready to go. Yeah, it should be based on. So, Derek, I'm with you. I think should be a meritocracy, right? Just based on your performance, based on your skill, the outcomes you achieve. I mean, that's what we should really be looking at. Trump 2023. Wait a minute. And then I came across this clip that I thought was kind of interesting. Back in 2016, I called the election. I was at work. And back at that point, you could still talk to people a little bit about politics without them, without them going into a blinded rage. So, I wagered with people and I won, right? And the day before the election, they came up to me and was like, "Are you sure? You could back out now. Are you sure you're going to go with this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know it for sure." And I meant it. And they laughed and they went off. But my thought process at the time, what I realized was that the polls that were out there completely misrepresented the sentiment of the people. And I understood that sentiment based on how I felt, based on how other people were reacting. And so the Democrat Party missed the boat completely. Because if you got some issues with the pocketbook, a lot of things stop mattering at that point, right? But this gentleman here really hit the nail on the head in terms of why Trump in this cycle, and it's very much connected to what I'm talking about from back in 2016, but he hit the nail on the head, and I think it's a good realization to have out there and to promote that none of this is exclusive of that nature. Everything happening here, we can all understand, we can all kind of hang out or what have you. But let me get it going here.
How did he win? Well, it was racism. It was misogyny, xenophobia. Really? 76 million from every walk of life? Up over every demographic from 4 years ago? It's racism. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was people who are tired of a system that's been lying to them. You can't finesse me with a whole bunch of words that don't mean nothing. Your celebrity endorsements didn't help you. And even though the candidate is deeply flawed, felony convictions, assault convictions, all of those things didn't matter to people who are saying, I can't pay for groceries. You got to understand that America is not what you think it is. America is the experience of the people who've lived it. And everybody has lived a different experience. So everyone should respect where everybody's coming from, regardless of what side you're on.
All right. Just got to move down to the... So I think the voter demographic, that profile of what's out there is still misunderstood by the Democrat Party. And the consequences of this election are, pretty much what you felt there. Now, let me see. This is the full... Okay, so that's that. Where's the other one? Okay, so this is just the partial. I have the full 60 minutes episode here, as well as Face the Nation. Might have to reserve those for a future live, because those are pretty long, in depth to kind of look at. But I'll just click through on the shortened clip here.
This past week, Republicans won the House majority, and President-elect Trump made nominations to his cabinet. Some nominees appear to have no compelling qualifications other than loyalty to Trump. The nominees are Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth to lead the 3 million people of the Department of Defense. He's a combat veteran, most recently a morning show host on Fox News with no government experience. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, in charge of law enforcement. Gaetz has been investigated by Republicans for alleged drug use and sex with a minor. Gaetz denies those allegations. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. She sought a pardon for Edward Snowden, who leaked U.S. secrets and now lives in Russia. And Robert Kennedy Jr. for Secretary of Health and Human Services, a skeptic of vaccinations. It's up to the new Republican majority in the Senate to decide whether these nominees are equipped to represent the American people.
So that's a short version of it, but again, Sunday morning program, all of them across the board. It's like somebody just had a morning meeting across the channels and said, hey, these are the points that we're going to hit home. Why don't you practice it, say it in your own words, and then, for the rest of the day, that's what you hear across all news channels. And eventually they do this with the local TV stations. You may have famously seen that clip where somebody kind of put boxes with 50 different TV stations together across the country, and they were all literally reading from the same script. I mean, that was pretty scary. All right, so we'll save those for later. But I guess public service announcements. Come on out here, follow me on the X platform. I'd appreciate it. I have a decent presence over here. Let me pull up my link tree. 1 second. Link tree. Yeah, my link in bio brings you here, where you can kind of hit other socials that I've got, and a few other items that are kind of listed out there. Close that. So that, I think, is going to be the 1-2 punch for the week. Russia will accelerate in the consumption of the news cycle, and that may take some of the heat off of the candidates that are being proposed to the different government agencies. But remains to be seen. All right. I appreciate everybody listening in tonight. I have had, how many people come through? Just about 7,000 people came through. Did pretty good on the concurrence. It's interesting. This is about what should be expected during this time frame. If I would have started 2 hours earlier, it seems like you can get quite a few more viewers at that point in time. There's just not enough people out there right now. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, for the week, look out for Russia as another big talking point. Trying to follow the same pattern they had last time, but this time it's focused on Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, so look out for that. And then, what did they talk about here again? Yeah, so fake news on appointments, and then don't lose sight of Russia. That's going to become an increasingly bigger and bigger problem, that we have to send forces to be out there. What does that necessarily mean for us? What does it mean for them? Remains to be seen. But I appreciate you guys. I'm going to sign out for now. I'm going to try to start this a little bit earlier in the evenings, so it's not so late at night, because I'm about to tell you, I'm about to fall over here, sleep. I just spent a little time making these notes, and I was like, oh, I'll make it a morning stream, but I don't know, I did it all, and I was like, okay, let's jump into it, but I'm running out of steam here. can't even connect two things that I'm doing here in my mind. But again, I appreciate everyone's participation in the chat. If you have some ideas about how to improve what would be fun or beneficial from a community standpoint, let me know. Here, I'll bring up my link tree again. Oops. I think I should have a contact here. Well, this business inquiries is an email, so I don't mind if you guys want to send me an email there. You could DM me on any of these platforms. I mean, whatever it is, whatever's easier for you guys. Just send me an email. Let me know what you think might help improve the quality of the streams, and how we can kind of get more of a community feel type activity over here. All right. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate you sticking around. And I'm just looking for a cancel button, but I can't find it. I am going to the inauguration. We'll be trying to go to the inauguration if I could clear a few things up. So look out for that. I'll probably put an event out there so that it gets penciled in. Same thing I did at the Kamala rally. Just be roaming around, just talking to people, seeing how they're feeling. If there's any disruptions or anything interesting that goes down, I'll just be there to film it and have a good time just listening to the speeches and stuff. But let me know if you got any ideas on that. If you want to help out with it, I got my Cash App up there. It's also just PoliticalCow. But anyway, I appreciate you guys.